right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Speed Street, the Speed Street podcast, a whole new era of the podcast. I am Connor Daly, as you might know. We have so much to talk about. We have so much that has happened between. I think this is the most that has ever happened in between episodes. We have a new friend on the street, the Speed Street, that is. A new co-host of the show, a great personality of the sport. Let's get to that before anything else. Chase Holden is here. Garage Guy Chase on the internet, as some of you may know. I have known this man for only a couple years now, but have very much respected what he has done getting into the motor racing world, the personality that he has, the voice that he has. And Chase, I think, will be a great addition to this program. So Chase, I actually, first of all, a lot of wonderful support on the Twitter sphere, for you announcing that you were on the show. So yeah, welcome to those new listeners, maybe, that are supporters of you, that are maybe now, listeners of the Speed Street podcast.
Absolutely. But dude, thanks so much. And yeah, I hope we have a ton of folks out there that are new listeners, new subscribers today to Speed Street Podcast. It's exciting, man. I'm glad to be able to link up with you here on Speed Street, get to do this program with you. I've been able to check out how the show has went, how it's gone, and it's exciting to enter this new arena of all motorsports, really specifically looking at IndyCar with you, and just getting to just kind of shoot the shit with you a little bit, man. It's going to be fun. We do that a ton whenever we do see each other. And so now getting to do that on a weekly basis, it's going to be Shenanigan City. I can feel it.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're trying to deliver all the right news and our opinions on said news, because there's a lot of things that, we've sat at my house and we've talked about. We have a great passion for this sport. What we like is motorsport. And where we want to see it is on the moon. We want to see it go to the moon, and that's what we're trying to do. So I can't wait. Appreciate you offering up your time and your studio, which I love. There's already great video backgrounds here.
Great guy.
We respect it, and so let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about. I mean, as I said, this might be a longer episode because we also do have a great interview that Chase was not there for yet, because this has all literally happened in a few days. But Jacob Abel, a great young Indy NXT driver. His dad owns an Indy 500 entry as well, Abel Motorsports. Honestly, I think you'll really, really like this interview. I think a lot of people like the Lindsey Brewer interview, which we did, kind of focusing on the young blood in the sport. So I'm excited for you guys to hear that. We'll get to that after a lot of news that we've got to talk about. And also, I think this is quite a funny note. If you did happen to watch the episode on YouTube last week, somehow there was 30 minutes of just black screen, just nothing. So we apologize for that. I text Bobby. I was like, oh man, I didn't actually realize this happened. So you know what? We had an issue there, but the whole episode was still there. So if you happen to somehow sit through 30 minutes of just plain black screen, you know what? Credit to you. You give yourself a little award. So we'll get on top of that this week. First of all, I was racing over the weekend, and by that I mean I wasn't. Nitro Cross was in Calgary. It was supposed to be an ice race, a snow race, and I wanted to let people know because the social updates were kind of weird and it felt really bad. A lot of great, incredible race fans were out there, and I had never been to the Calgary area before. I thought it was always supposed to be snowy there. Turns out when we got there, it was like 55 degrees. Hard to build an ice track outside when those temperatures are apparently above freezing. So basically, it just didn't work. The track is built on the Calgary Stampede, like horse racing track. So the dirt is very sacred up there as well. So we can't get through the ice and into the dirt. And obviously, we drive with big spikes on the tires for these Nitro Cross cars. So essentially, the event was supposed to be Friday, Saturday. It then got pushed to one event on Sunday, but it didn't get cold and snowy until Saturday night. Literally, Saturday night, it finally got below freezing. It started snowing. It was snowing like crazy on Sunday. but snow is not enough for this event. So to get this out of the way, we want to thank anyone who came to that event. It was very awesome to see so many people. It seemed like it was going to be fun. I got to do like a total of 3 laps. That's about it. A couple jumps, and some donuts at the end, which I found out donuts with spiked tires, very difficult. They have a lot of grip. So I was a little bit confused about that. And
That's
so,
interesting.
Yeah, we did not get, I know. I would have thought donuts are great at any time with 1,000 horsepower, but if you have like giant, 3-inch spikes that are metal coming out of your tires, apparently donuts are way more difficult. So
we need to find a way to make like miniature blades on like hockey shoes,
Yes.
Get that. If you get that, dude, that's like perfection. That's Cyclone City. That's what you want when you're out there.
Yeah, we needed that because all we were doing was putting on a show. So
you text me. And I was thinking, because like we were talking, and I was just like, how did it go? And you were like, we didn't get to. He's like, oh, I jumped a ramp, did some donuts, and we had to get out of there. And I'm just thinking, like, that sounds like a good day. Because if I'm down here, I'm in the great state of Louisiana down here in New Orleans area. If I'm just at the grocery store and I tell somebody what I did today, I was like, yeah, I jumped a ramp, did some donuts, and I left. They're going to be like, what laws did you break? Like that's where that comes from.
Exactly. So no laws were broken. We had a great time with Travis Pastrana, though. Again, poor guy is still recovering from his, he got a new knee. So he wasn't going to race, but he was basically director of the party. So got to enjoy some times with him. But yeah, sorry to anyone who was expecting racing news, but we didn't race at all. So I hope that this means that the team Dry Rhine Bowl, which, driving in the Indy 500 for them as well. I hope they will have me back in the Las Vegas round, which is March 1st and 2nd, I think. We'll see. We're going to try to sell that, maybe get some sponsorship for it. We'll see. But the final round of the Nitro Cross Series is in Las Vegas, March 1st and 2nd. And yeah, Dry Ramble Racing. Oh, look, fun segue. Literally the day we recorded last week's episode, I had the press release for the Indy 500 announcement, and I asked the team, I was like, can I talk about it on the show? Or and it was just one day too late, the announcement was. So we were not able to reveal the full information yet. Obviously, if you've been listening to this show for a while, you understand that I've been saying, hey, there's an announcement coming. We got some exciting things happening. So, want to get into it a little bit. Dennis Reinbold called me a year ago, essentially, even 2 years ago, while I was contracted with my previous employer. He's like, hey, just let me know when we can do something, because he wanted to have me there. And I got to respect him, because one of the first things that Dennis said to me this offseason, obviously my life essentially collapsed into a million pieces most of last year. But Dennis calls me, said, hey, don't need a sponsor, don't care about anything else. All I want to do is have the best chance at winning the Indy 500. So I want to have you and Ryan Hunter-Reay. And I said, well, that's great. I mean, if you are a part of a team that is only focused on winning, you don't need to come with a giant bag of cash. You don't have to come with all the bells and whistles. It's like, we just want to win the race. We're going to do anything we want, so we want the best guys to do it. That's how you're supposed to. That's how Roger Penske goes motor racing. That's how Chip Ganassi goes motor racing with at least 2 of his cars. So, that's how Andretti is focused on it, right? This year, they're like, we're going to pay our guys. We're going to get Kyle Kirkwood. We're going to get Colton Herta, Marcus Ericsson. Those are the dogs. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to pay those guys.
Absolutely.
So it's obviously, I would love to be full-time in IndyCar. That's not possible, right? We can't go racing in IndyCar without the sponsorship. We that's kind of crumbled around us, it seems. We still are working on a lot for the future, but obviously that hasn't happened in time for anything yet. But to have an owner,
anything can change.
Anything can change.
I just say that anytime, anything can change. You get out there on one of the greatest ovals in the world. Okay, you get out there, you do your thing. I remember the first time I watched you get down. It was my first Indy 500, actually. It was 2021.
Yep.
You were getting down out there. Air Force ride. You were leading the laps. Crowd went wild. Look, it's the playground, all right? You just go hard in the paint, baby. Hard in the paint.
Yeah, exactly. So we still got plenty of weeks to sell for the 500, sell for other things as well. So, I want to say to everyone who listened to the show, we appreciate the support. Both Ryan and I are we're pumped. Ryan and I have talked. Obviously, there was some tension between Ryan and I last year. but he's also the only person who suffered as much as I did because we had to drive the same car. And he says it to many people and will say it to me that the greatest thing that I can have happen in my career, and again, this will never be like a public thing, but Ryan will be like, yeah, Connor wasn't the problem there. And I'm like, well, you know what? As long as he tells the people inside the sport and other people like that, that makes me feel better because that's just the truth of it, sadly. So it's the, it's the tour of 2024. We're all, we're teammates now. We're happy to be in the Dry Ryan Bull Racing team with Don Cusick. Don Cusick obviously is part of this as well, the Cusick Motorsports Group. So appreciate Don's support of the team. That's a really helpful element to our program. And Don obviously supported Stephen Wilson, obviously, last year. We obviously hope that Stephen finds something in the future as well. I think Don is still going to get behind him any way he can. But this is a great chance. I think already going to the shop, I see what's going on there. I mean, I've been going to this IndyCar shop since December. So I signed my contract in December, and here we are in February talking about it. So it's been a long time coming. And so, yeah, we're going Indy 500 racing. So that's very exciting.
It's always exciting, and I can't wait to get out there myself. I've only been to, like I said, the one. I'm ready to get back to another one. I heard a lot of news that was coming out today, though. There was some stuff that was talked about on Tuesday that it dropped over on X. Some people were talking about some changes possibly in the IndyCar season. There's some things that have been served up right now, maybe some speculation, maybe some things to consider when it comes to, I believe, IndyCar and having specified places for teams and drivers in the Indy 500. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because I wasn't going to get into that yet, but
I'm just curious.
That's exactly where we need to go because we're talking Indy 500, and this is the dumbest thing ever. Like I tweeted that the statement to the Andretti Formula One team about them not being able to be competitive, so we don't want them, was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It was in the top 5 of dumbest things I've ever heard. I think we're moving this potential thing into also the top 5 of the dumbest things ever, guaranteeing spots for the Indy 500. I literally did an interview with Dave Calabro today at the Dry Ryan Bull shop, and he asked me a brief question about it. I said, you know what? Let's wait another 100 years before we start talking about that. The 500's been around for over 100 years. Let's just keep going. Another 100 years, you guys can talk about it. We'll all be dead by then. So I don't want to hear about this. I think it's, there's only a few people who this benefit. And those people are, responsible for obviously putting cars out on the racetrack. But these people, and I think we're going to have Mike Shank on the show in a couple weeks, and I'd love to ask him his opinion on this because he is, again, one of the people that, is responsible for putting cars out on the track. Now, again, most of our sponsorship, let's try to play devil's advocate a little bit here. Most of our sponsorship for our seasons purely is based on the Indy 500 because that's the one that people watch. Sadly, no one else watches the rest of the season. In reality, we're trying to get more, right? We want to get above that million dollar number, million people number every race. But the whole selling point of our series is the Indy 500. Now, if you go to any major sponsor that are on any of our cars for the Indy 500, everything is based around making that race, being a part of the biggest race in the world, the largest single-day sporting event in the world. Yes, that is devastating if you do not make the race. But United Rentals didn't make the race last year. They're back. You know what I mean? Like, people kind of keep going back to saying, like, oh, well, certain sponsors have come back for sure. Will Power almost didn't make it in the Verizon car, and, Marco Andretti and all this, like, the years of Ryan Hunter-Reay when he didn't make it but had to get in with DHL. And, there's all kinds of ways you can play this. But the Indy 500 has to be the Indy 500. And the Indy 500 is qualified to make the race. It's the fastest 33. It doesn't matter who it is. Part of the reason, there used to be 60 cars qualifying for the Indy 500. We don't have that anymore. Imagine if there were still 60 cars trying to qualify. Then you'd have even more owners that are like, oh no, like we're going to get our egos hurt if we don't make it. It's like, well, then be better. I'm sorry. Like that's what pushes everyone to make the race. You have to be the best that you can be. If you didn't make it, like the Rahal team last year, then they better do a ton of work because they have more resources than the Abel Motorsports team. They have more resources than the Dry Ramble Racing team. They have more resources than a lot of teams, and it's on them for not making it. And again, I drove for this team. I love the Rahal folks, but like, this is me being a race fan. This is someone who supports IndyCar. This is, again, something that probably 10 people are for, maybe 12, and you've got every single fan on the internet that is completely against this. I've never seen two most unilateral. You know what we can do to unify the country? We can ban Andretti from F1 and talk about Indy 500 guaranteed entries. I've never seen more unilateral support for anything in my life than hating FIA and F1 and hating the fact that people want to talk about guaranteed entries.
That's the big thing for me too, man. Like, that's what I'm seeing is like, you know, you've got a race here that is, you know, there's a lot of races throughout the season that, you know, you keep it that way. That's fine. But it's like, you know, you got your big boys like the Indy 500, the Daytona 500, even the Daytona 500, you got to qualify in. And I mean, it's easier to do on that side.
And there's a charter system.
Yeah.
You can say that, but like I was a non-charter car last year, and like I was not fighting with other charter cars to get in. You know what I mean? Like that's
what a time.
But that's a different. I don't think you can. That's not the same thing. Like the Indy 500, I'm sorry, it's bigger and it's more important and it's better. Like
it is.
It's just what it is. Like that's just science. That's like in a book, like on the 10 Commandments or something. But it's
true.
I have a big problem with it. And I'm very curious to see where this goes. I really am, because obviously I think this year we're already going to have 34, 35 entrants again. And that just means that there are teams worried. Now, again, what I think it has to, here's the thing. If last year it's just Abel Motorsport and Dry Ramble or the teams that just show up, extra cars, like if it's just those teams that are battling for it, then everyone's like, oh, this is great. But the most awesome thing about the Indy 500 is there's always a team that shows up behind. And you cannot re-engineer the wheel in 2 weeks or just a week of practice. If your cars are slow, that means you have a philosophy within your construction of the vehicle, within whatever engineering science that you've got, that no matter what Ray Hall did, they never found any speed in those cars. So, there's going to be a team that shows up like that. So for me, I hope that nothing changes. I hope that it's, hey, the fastest 33. I completely agree with the fans on this one. I'm a man of the people myself. I try to understand, and I know Roger Penske's a businessman, right? Big business. And I know he doesn't ever want to see one of his cars, not in that race. But he was, at one point, there was a Penske car that didn't make a race. Like, and that was a
That's
huge
what makes
story.
it beautiful, though.
Exactly.
That's what makes it beautiful.
It makes Sports Center then. Like, think of it like this. Yes, that might be tough, but the Graham Rahal story of not making the race was one of the biggest things that I saw on the internet. You lose all of that. Honestly, if there's guaranteed spots at the Indy 500, don't call it the Indy 500 anymore. I'm sorry, you can't do it. You have to call it the welcome to the Indy Memorial Day special. Like,
it's the Indy Oval on the schedule.
Yeah, like I believe you lose the authenticity of what the Indy 500 is by just saying, hey, you know what? We're gonna have 26 spots that are for sure. Doesn't matter if they're the slowest people ever, because then what are those guys? If they're really slow in qualifying, they probably don't even go out. They're like, yeah, we know we're not going to be on pole, so we're not going to qualify. Because if teams are that into saving money, they're not going to qualify. They're just going to be like, hey, we're not fast enough to make the pole, so we're just not even going to run. We're going to save our tires. We're going to focus on race stuff. That's how it is going to work. I know motorsport with every fiber in my soul. So
that's how competition works.
That's how, yeah, exactly. So that's how I feel about it. It makes, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people high up in the IndyCar offices and IMS offices who I'm sure like, well, if we want to keep our business strong, we got to protect the people that invest a lot into the series. I'm like, well, look, all those owners, I mean, I respect them because we appreciate what they put into it. But you can't just dumb down the greatest event in the world. I'm sorry. It just makes it less. It just makes it less cool. It puts pressure on 6 people. You know what I mean? And it doesn't put pressure on anyone. When it's qualifying day, you want pressure on every single person, every single driver, because that's what's beautiful about it.
Yep, that's the way it's supposed to be too. I'll just say too, like I know things cost money. I
Absolutely.
understand. You got to pay money for things. You got to make it work. We got to find a way around it. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
There's a way around it. We're gonna find it. You won't
Yeah.
have to worry about it anymore. Let's just do that. Let's do that.
You know
Let's
what?
stick with that.
Should
we get to work? What
Yeah.
are we gonna do? We're gonna make a plan. We're gonna draft a game plan.
Yeah, we're
put it
gonna
on
be
paper.
better next year. You know what I mean? We're gonna be better next year. Like
Pull out my notebook.
Yeah, I've fought to be in the race before. I have. I've been on the last row twice. I get it. I've been with teams that have been small. We didn't have the speed, but I was prepared that day to do anything in my physical human ability, either die or make the race. Like that was what I was gonna do. And so if you're not willing to do that, if it's a different level of commitment to the actual glory of Indy 500 history, I'm very passionate about this.
No,
so anyway,
I get it.
hope,
Trust me.
these
are good topics.
You can't just, the owners, I respect them, and I'm sure people are going to hate me for saying this, big business, but that's why I have a platform, because we like to talk about, sometimes the truth hurts. You know what? Sometimes the truth hurts. People don't like the truth.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. Look, hey, you know who was okay with the truth though? There's a headline I came across. Kyle Larson forces the uncomfortable in latest IndyCar test. So they're staying on track with the Indy 500. Obviously,
yes.
Kyle Larson. I have an amateur sketch here of Kyle Larson. This amateur sketch of Kyle Larson.
I like that.
We got to find him.
For those who are just listening, it is a beautiful image.
It is. It's very pretty. It's very detailed. Very nice. Very
long
beautiful.
Long neck on Kyle Larson. Long neck on him.
Right. He's got to be able to see out the halo, dude.
Yeah, that's true.
He's going to be running in the Indy 500 this year. That's got a lot of NASCAR fans paying attention to what's going on. And there were some tweets that dropped out. So I got some stuff. Well, not tweets anymore. Some posts on X.
Yes.
That were pulled up here. So
Elon's
I was reading
backyard.
This one.
Yeah,
Elon's backyard, where he posts memes when he feels like it. Kyle Larson jumped in an IndyCar at Phoenix Raceway on Monday to help find its limit. This was off Speed Sport, I believe. He came close when he was nearly spun out. Quote, I got loose at one point and almost spun out, so that was good to kind of feel the limit there at slower speeds. You want to talk about what that's like, and then maybe like make the comparison of coming from Kyle. Like, I know Kyle's a good dude, and he's a competitor, and you know that as well. So this is kind of like his first dangy that he's had out here in this car.
It's very interesting. I'm very glad we segued into this. This is good.
Take the ties off.
No, there was a saying back in the day, I remember, because like I was a part of the IndyCar era where we raced at Phoenix in 2016 and 17, my rookie year and my second year in the sport. And when we were racing at Phoenix, like that was one of physically the toughest places. That was an insane race. Our cars were probably a little bit too high a downforce to really race well there. It was a tough race to watch. We didn't sell enough tickets. Maybe the marketing wasn't great. But I really enjoyed driving around Phoenix. I thought it was a fantastic experience. And I'll never forget like being flat in Phoenix, like qualifying. Like we watched the NASCAR finale there. They're downshifting, braking. We had Christopher Bell with a brake failure last year. We're flat out in the IndyCar, in the Aeroscreen era when we had a ton of downforce. And so obviously Kyle's got a little bit less downforce with this car, this package. But there was a saying like AJ Foyt said or something that like, oh, if you're good at Phoenix, you're going to be good at Indy for some reason. And I don't know why that was, but I had heard that, and that might be completely untrue. But someone told me that. I was in the Foyt era, it might have been, but what I find interesting as well about Kyle is he's had now 2 days of testing in the IndyCar. I would like to get a test day in the IndyCar, but I'm not a rookie, so I guess I get it. But Phoenix is definitely an interesting one. I see why they did it now. And if it is purely the physical limitations of the tire sidewall, if it's the limitations of, because the steering is going to be super heavy at Phoenix. So it's obviously going to be much lighter at Indy. So maybe it's a physicality. He's getting used to the physicality of the car. A day at Phoenix is going to wear you out like crazy. So maybe they were like, hey, we just want to get your arms pumped here. We want to get you handling this car. at high speed, high load, work on pit stops, work on coming in into the pit box. So I do understand it as I look at it. It's a little bit, I would have said maybe go to Texas instead. Like if you could do a test day at Texas, because Texas is quite challenging. It's the same aero package. But I think he's already done a test at Texas now that I think about it. Can you look that up, Bobby? Did Kyle Larson test at Texas? I want to say like one of his first days was maybe at Texas, but maybe it was at Indy. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Pretty sure
Pretty
sure it was just the one at Indy and now the one at Phoenix.
Yeah. It was the other rookies that did a day at Texas, now that I remember. But yes, so if he didn't do Texas, Phoenix, okay, I understand that. But again, I can't question McLaren's strategy because they have a lot of smart people working there, and Hendrick Motorsport as well. So cool for Kyle to get in there. I do look forward to talking to him at some point about what he thought of it, what he thinks of it as he goes into May. But I think they're going to be I think they're going to be good. I think that team's going to be fast. I think if they show up slow, then that is a serious internal problem. But I have a feeling that is not going to happen. So I'm confident in him.
I'm going to choose to believe because, look, it's always exciting, when the month of May rolls around and then you find out that you got a guy that's going to try to do the double, man.
Yeah.
And you got a guy that does that. Like, I'm a big Tony guy. All right. Like me some T-Stew. Okay.
Yep.
So with him, he had his time. Yeah. Kurt Busch was another one that had their time.
Kurt Busch was a great little crossover. I enjoyed that one a lot.
And so with Kyle Larson, the caliber of driver he is in NASCAR, it makes you wonder too. Like, I don't think he's going to go out there and win the Indy 500. And maybe
I don't think so either.
Maybe that is, maybe that's going to make some people mad. I'm not here to make everybody happy all the time.
Yep.
But I have to be realistic and say that, like, while I don't think that he will do the Indy 500, I still think he would have a shot because of just how his schedule is, how he runs dirt cars. He'll get maybe an hour of nap on an airplane and go show up at a track and finish in the top 5. This dude's got a shot to win the Coke 6. And I'm just going to say, maybe not the Indy 5, possibly Coke 6. And I think that I don't think any driver has ever done that, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think a
no
driver
one's won both,
won,
that's for sure.
not both, for sure,
yeah.
but at least one. So and I did a little bit of trying to search around here myself. I got this little G-Boy AI bot I built.
Okay.
I was trying to get some correlation data pulled up between Phoenix and IMS. It did not do that good. So got some work to do. Got to get behind the scenes.
The AI,
pulled up an Indiana Jones.
The AI is not analyzing racetracks very well.
No, not yet. We're gonna have to graph them. See, I'm trying to get. I want to get the Apple Vision goggles. I want to go out to IMS. I want to map it. I want to map it out. I want to, maybe put some Anakin Skywalker pod racing out there. We gotta go. We gotta get wild with it. But that's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna change the game. We're gonna
respect that.
I believe it.
I respect that. Well, yeah. So that's a lot that's going on in IndyCar. We have 100 Days to Indy as well, season 2. Don't really have to talk a ton about that. I think we sort of hinted at it, but 100 Days to Indy was a great show. I do believe it focuses well on the Indy 500. I texted the director of it last night to say congratulations. He was pumped. He said he's going to be in town soon. I have a feeling, once again, I will not be featured at all, mainly because I think the upper echelon of the sport has no interest in letting me talk about racing on a television screen.
Sad.
But that's okay, because when we win the race, then it'll be forced upon everyone. So
I like that energy.
That would be pretty cool if we were to obviously win the race and then suddenly now we're a part of 100 Days to Indy. But I watched every episode of the show. I love that we get a show. And honestly, super thankful for the CW for giving us that time. And the director, great guy. The people that are involved in the show, great people. We did film a lot of fun stuff last year, although none of it made it. But that's okay. We put our effort in there. So I will still, if they want me to do anything, I would love to do it. They focused last year a little bit on Stephen Wilson. He was a single entry for the Indy 500. Maybe since I'm a single entry to the Indy 500, only hometown driver. I don't know. Maybe there's something there. I don't know. But very thankful that CW is doing this. Season 2, I think, will be great. Obviously, you can learn from season 1. And now that we've seen NASCAR's Netflix documentary, I watched every single episode. tremendous show. And
Tell
I
me
gotta give
about
those.
every single episode because, like, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm gonna be 100% honest.
Did you not watch it?
I'm halfway through it.
Okay.
I'm happy that it exists.
Yeah.
And like, so the moment that it came out, I was just like, for years, like I've been doing NASCAR content, the betting content, everything like that. And for a long time, it's like my main goal was always like, I want to see the spotlight on racing and in NASCAR specific, because like F1 had Drive to Survive. Cool.
Yep.
And like they had like some of my wife's friends were coming over, like talking about, oh, Charlie Claire?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, Charlie Claire.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charles E. Claire, that guy.
Yeah.
But it's like you want to build that kind of hype around it, and so I think that for me was what was really exciting. But I started watching it. Denny is definitely taken over as like the main character.
Oh yeah,
he can't
fellow
cook
podcasters.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to him.
Yeah.
Dirty Mo. Can't cook breakfast. But I love the energy that he has as a human being. He's just out there, he's doing his thing.
Yeah,
and,
I thought it was a great show. I mean, there's something about what that Netflix production group does though, where you watch it, there's no commercials, whatever. Like, I just feel like it's next level serious. Like I'm locked in. I think the sound, they could have done a bit more more sound of the raw NASCAR engine noise. I think there's a little bit more there, but I mean, I already knew what happened. You know what I mean? Like I what happens, but like,
yeah.
But it was cool. Like I was cool to see that, them interviewing Christopher Bell and saying like, yeah, no one thought I had a chance to this type of stuff. Cause like, I thought, and again, wild to see how many people supported that show too. When I tweeted, I said, what do people think of this so far? I've never seen so many people that were like for it, because F1 fans, like if you tweeted about Drive to Survive, 75% of those responses would be like, it sucks, it's awful for the sport. So NASCAR,
that's so weird.
I would have thought NASCAR fans, again, NASCAR Twitter can get very hostile.
That's a
but
place.
Everyone was like pretty happy about it. So I don't know how to take that. Like I think it was good, but it's also maybe like the F1 fans, that's a different mental attitude sometimes. There's a bit of a high horse type situation. But NASCAR, everyone seemed to really enjoy it, which that's a great success. So I think we got to be happy with it.
Yeah, it's down to
like
earth.
Unilateral support.
No, I was looking
that's
at some
our word of the week, by the way. Unilateral. Yeah,
unilateral.
Yeah,
we're like the gas station pumps now. Like we're gonna give like the word of the day. I love those, by the way, dude. I'm telling you, my knowledge has increased tenfold.
There
just
you go.
by pumping gas.
Yeah,
it's a great time. I had a tweet that popped up here. They just was showing some stuff that was written down. I think it was off of YouTube comments on Derry Gillum. It said, "Never watch NASCAR, but I will definitely be watching this show and NASCAR races from here on out." Another one. Been an F1 fan for some years now, and I just needed a reason to start watching NASCAR, and this show got me hooked. That was one of the tweets that did really well. And that's what it takes, is the dramatization, is going inside of their lives. It's one thing to watch NASCAR on television. And shout out to Marty, by the way. He had the quote.
Marty Smith. Oh, greatest.
The quote.
Marty Smith. I mean, that just you got to have a voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think IndyCar, tried to do that a little bit in 100 Days to Indy. We're getting there. But like when they got Marty Smith and you got Steve Letarte, you got like, I don't know, there was voices in there that bring you in. I still have a letter written over my shoulder from Marty Smith. He interviewed me before the 100th running of the Indy 500. You want me to read it? I'll get it.
Yes,
I'll read it.
I want to read the letter. And I just gotta say, he's such a great guy. If you're listening to this program, you're watching this program, you don't know who Marty Smith is, do your homework, do your job. Okay.
All right. I'm back.
Say that.
All right. I'm back. So this letter, I got a letter in the mail from Marty Smith, ESPN. It's very official. This is May 30th, 2016. He wrote this to me. He said, "Connor, just a quick note of thanks for taking some time for us on SportsCenter." Yes, I was on SportsCenter. That's wild. "During the lead up to the Indy 500, the interview with you and Pat McAfee was quite memorable and certainly made our effort there better. Continued success, young man. See you down the line. Marty Smith, ESPN." I mean, how do you not love that guy? Like this is something that I will save for forever. This is the note right here for those on YouTube. You could see it. Pretty cool.
Nice little card stock there.
Card stock. Yeah. Marty Smith card stock.
You'll
guy.
play, dude.
We gotta have him on the show. We're definitely gonna interview him on the show. That gives me a great idea. But yeah, I think that it was a great show. I don't want to go too deep into it because I think everyone knows my
still
thoughts
gotta
on
watch
Netflix programs. Yeah, but it's a good one. So I was really, really impressed.
Shout out to Booty Barker though. I will say shout out to Booty. Meme.
Awesome.
He made the meme, bro.
Yeah.
The meme of that show is
guy.
Booty, bro. Guess I lied to your ass. Like, I love it.
But also him just drinking bourbon in his like bourbon room in his house. You haven't got to that part yet, but like,
no,
I had to pause it because I'm a big bourbon guy. Me and Daniel Ricardo, we talk about bourbon every week. That's all we do is send each other pictures of what bourbon we're drinking. And Booty Barker, one of the most incredible bourbon rooms I've ever seen in my life.
Dude.
Man,
you're not lying, bro. You really are. Like, dude, like you go into Connor's house, dude. It's just like there's not even a display. It's just there. It's there. It is there. It's something
screen.
Serious. Yeah, I love it. But no, it's great to hear. And like I said, I got to finish up on the show, but I love to hear that people are all in on that, and like that's what it takes. And I hope IndyCar can get that same vibe going with the CW, and I think that they can. And I believe in it, man. I believe in it.
I do too. I believe in the CW. I do. We're doing more sports content. They got the right people involved. And again, I obviously have. I hope we get to see more of Joseph Newgarden's unclothed body. Obviously, that was a big part of the season last year.
Oh yeah.
Maybe we get more of the thighs in. Who knows? You know, big Joseph Newgarden pictorial editorial special of Joseph's body. Maybe they should have him on a show.
The CW should have Joseph on the show as a superhero. They should do that. There should be some crossovers. Put him on Vampire Diaries.
Yep.
You know,
I have a feeling the first episode and a half is going to be like, what has life been like since Joseph won the Indy 500? I'm just seeing it. I'm seeing it, which is fine because Joseph is a person. Joseph is he's our American hero. You know what I mean? He's our guy with the cape. He's the Captain America shield guy. That used to be Ryan Hunter-Reay, but Ryan's now older and retired, sort of. So I'm very excited about. Please subscribe to that channel, CW, buy it, or it's just on. If you have
public access television,
watch it. If you have rabbit ears, you could watch it. So you'll be fine.
You're ready to go.
Coax, yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, we could literally talk on this show for about 10 hours about everything that's going on, but there's a couple other major things that I want to get to before we get to our interview with young Jacob Abel. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the whole FIA F1 rejection of Andretti is something that again came out after we did our show, and it's been a few days now. And big F1 media decided to call Lewis Hamilton and tell him to go to Ferrari so they could forget the Andretti story. So again, I'm deep into the conspiracy of the fact that big Liberty media might be the smartest people of all time because they had potentially the worst ever reaction to a news story in the history of news. All of America was ready to march to war with the FIA, not FIA. FIA approved it, but the Formula One management group, whatever that is. I was ready. I saw people ready to take up shields and swords. You know what I mean? It was something like that. Swords. And then all of a sudden they had Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari, which is the biggest news story in Formula One since I've been alive.
You want to know what I think though? I think that really what was happening is F1 planned all this because they were salty that NASCAR got a Netflix show.
There you go. Maybe
they wanted to make sure no one was paying attention. They were like, we're the only ones with a Netflix show. We are Netflix racing. Yeah. That's us. And so they just dished all this out to just try to simmer it down. But no, says them. They came back. They prevailed. I still believe. But yes, I kind of put it this way, with F1, it's they're kind of like I said this on Instagram. It was they're like the pretentious bully in the movie that ends up getting creamed at the end. When the big dogs come to play. So I know they're saying now that they've got to wait. They want to see the GM engine built and all this. The excuses and things happen at times. People have them.
Yeah,
But
it's just, and I've talked about this a lot. I mean, I think some people who are new fans of mine don't really know much about my previous life, and a lot of my haters definitely don't know about when I actually won a lot of stuff in this sport.
shout out to haters.
But shout out to the haters. But you know, I used to win races in Formula 3 and spend a lot of time in Europe and tried to be an American Formula 1 driver, which was very rare at the time, very difficult. And you'd almost get laughed out of the room many times, like when you say, "Oh, you're American." You know what I mean? And so, you know, even when I won and like was on pole over there, and like you'd be like, I beat everyone else, like Carlos Sainz, Danny Kvyat, people that are like in the sport, right? Just because you were American, you would get laughed out of the room or you would be looked down upon. And I thought we were in a world, certainly now, where we're not doing that anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, hey, like we're respecting everyone. I don't know. I thought that was the case, but I've never seen a more disrespectful group of people towards another group of people. You know, it's certainly in sports.
Entitled.
So, you know, it's kind of crazy that happens. The statements that were made, the fact that they think Andretti wouldn't be competitive because that being the headline. I mean, I love Liberty's PR department because, again, they've dominated the world. They've got one of the most powerful Netflix shows in the world. They're selling events. You know, they all of a sudden covered it up with a giant Lewis Hamilton story. So they're very smart, but like, I mean, you're trying to go after American money. Like, you have 3 events in the United States and you're out here basically chopping Andretti's heads off at the stake, like right in front of her, like a public execution. Like, yep, they're dead to us. You're like, what in the world? How can you even do that? Like,
Are you trying to pull a Napoleon?
I remember a time in Formula 1 where we had Caterham, some people in America would say. You'd have HRT, and you had Marussia, a non-existent Russian sports car manufacturer, as a F1 team. I mean, that's not that long ago. That is literally less than 10 years ago. And so I find it fascinating that we are now like this F1 Netflix stardom, like, oh my gosh, so much money in F1. That's all they needed to just build that saddle on that high horse even more sturdy. And they're like, you know what? Nah, like we don't need this. Like, Andretti has sponsors and partners that are major businesses. General Motors, large company. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Large group of people. They've invested in the sport. They've hired people. I do believe they will get to F1. I really do. I think there's enough passion inside Michael Andretti, Mario Andretti, Dan Towers from Gamebridge. You know, a lot of great people there. I do believe they will get there. But some of the statements, can you imagine, like, you remember what Michael Jordan said? Like, all he needed was that little bit of motivation before that one NBA Finals when one guy said something to him about something small, and like, can you imagine the amount of motivation that Andretti has now? Well, exactly. Like, can you imagine the motivation that those guys have now to continue to work on this? Because if I were them, I would want to get to F1 and absolutely drive a wooden stake down those other teams' throats. Like, yep, hey, sorry guys, we're on the podium. And again, it's
just
going
drag
to be
souls across the track, dude. Straight up, dude. Just come in, and I want to see the caddy in F1. I want Cadillac in F1.
Exactly.
That's what I'm here for. I got the Buick on the hat today.
Yeah.
I want the caddy in F1. I want it now.
Exactly. And I think that's what's good. But again, I don't want to say that it's not going to be hard. Like, a lot of these Europeans, like, well, they don't think it's going to be hard. Of course it's hard. It took Red Bull like 15 to ton of years to get from, buying an F1 team, just getting in. Red Bull used to be Jackie Stewart's team, and then it was, I think it was Jag before it was even Red Bull.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to take time. Yes. But why eliminate someone's chance to make your sport more competitive, to make your sport more watchable, to open your sport to more eyes, more fans? I don't know how that makes sense. Scared, yes. But like,
Very
I
scared.
know there's a financial element. I obviously don't make any money, so I don't know how that works. Those guys make hundreds of millions of dollars, so that may be maybe that's a different thing. I know there's a lot of hundreds of $1 million on the line, but it's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So I had to get to that because I knew people were excited to have me talk about it a little bit. And I hope, what's funny? I still want to work at F1 races with Bob Varsha again. So, like, I hope that they're still cool with me coming to work at F1 because it doesn't mean I'm not a fan of F1. I just don't know why that was said and why this is happening.
Yeah, their microphones are really nice, by the way. Completely off topic. Very nice microphones they have there. The little red
F1. Yep.
Yeah, it goes right over here. What's that called, Bobby? Do you know what these are called?
Just the mic covers, like the
yeah. What are they called? There's like a nice name for them. Like I know the boxes on mics are like they call them flags.
I didn't even know that.
They call those flags.
We'll have to Google that one. So yeah, Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. Everyone knows how crazy that is. I don't really care. He's making $100 million a year. It's absurd. Pay him whatever he wants. Give him half of Ferrari. Give him half the ownership.
Buy him a horse.
That's cool. Buy a horse. Yeah, give him a couple horses. I'm sure he's got now a couple horses. So good for Lewis. I think it's cool. Cool for the sport. I don't like it for Carlos Sainz. Good friend of mine. Longtime friend of mine. But hey,
where do you think he's going to go?
I have no idea. I'm sure he'll go somewhere and make a ton of money, and that's all that matters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shout out to Carlos.
Man, that was a lot. I know we got to a lot of motorsport stuff. There's a ton of amazing things going on. We had the Clash also happen.
Yeah.
But before we get to the Clash, I wanted to get into something that kind of, while we're on open wheel racing, I got a call last week after we did the show from Townsend Bell. If you know Townsend Bell, obviously, IndyCar driver. Maybe we'll have him on the show sometime. And this is kind of just like a bit of a promo for something that I think would be cool if any of our young listeners want to be involved in motorsport. Right? I get a lot of people asking me all the time, how you get into motorsport. And I did want to take this just a quick bit of time in this show because if you're listening and you're a young person, you're like, I really would like to get into motorsport. How do I get there? And Townsend Bell made me aware of this. Townsend Bell's father-in-law, Rod Campbell, who passed away a few years ago. Rod Campbell was a big supporter of mine, big supporter of motorsport, great guy, great family. And they've set up a scholarship in his name, the Rod Campbell Award. Feel free to Google it. There's a story on Racer Magazine, racer.com about it as well. But the scholarship's in its fourth year, and so they're trying to get more people to apply because obviously we want to, give someone a chance to work in motorsports. They get basically the winner of this scholarship gets 4 to 6 weeks of a paid internship across a variety of companies. So the companies could be NBC Sports, the company could be Brian Herta Autosport, could be Racer Magazine, could be a company called Phoenicia Sports, or Steinbrenner Racing. Obviously, Steinbrenner Racing, we know, Steinbrenner, that's the Yankees. That's our buddy Colton Herta. So all three of the winners from the first 3 years of the program are now full-time in racing, working in racing. So we wanted to give this, this award just a little bit of publicity. I think it's great for young race fans. And so just give it a Google. Check it out. You can apply, somewhere online. I'm sure I wish I had that actual, application link, but there is a link in the Racer story. So if you Google it, and I'll post it in the description of the YouTube channel as well. But yeah, it's basically there's a link to it in the Racer story. So if you Google Racer story, Rod Campbell Award link, and you can apply. So I've actually already found it myself, and I'm not very educated, so pretty easy to find. So I just wanted to give that a little bit of publicity as Townsend called to help us out there. So if you're a young person, go apply to have a job in racing. I mean, that'd be sweet. Sounds like.
Heck yeah, go get them jobs. It's always good to get people more involved in motorsports, and we need it.
Yeah, exactly. So before we get to Jacob Abel, a little bit of a Clash reaction, a little bit of NASCAR class, a little Clash activity. I want to get to Jacob Abel. This is going to be a little bit of a longer episode because we had a lot to talk about. But what'd you think? What'd you think of the Clash? Moved up a day early because of the, my girlfriend's in LA right now, and she says it's basically underwater. So I think that probably smart move by NASCAR.
That was the smartest move that I think we have seen in quite some time. From them. I think Denny actually, shout out to Denny again.
Shout out Denny.
he's making things happen, man. Like, and that's the beauty of it, man. Sometimes you just gotta kind of say a little something. You gotta put it out there. I'm just gonna throw you a little dart, take it. Like, and they're taking it and they're listening. And I think that right there, like, that shows we're listening to our drivers. We're listening. They're the ones driving these cars. They're the ones that are piloting and fueling the sport. Let's listen to them. Let's give them the credibility they deserve. And they did. They moved it up a whole day. Now, the unfortunate event, MGK couldn't play.
Yeah.
It really made a lot of people sad.
Yep.
I
they
like
didn't
MGK.
have a big
I've
seen him play live. I've seen him play live. I liked it. I liked the show.
Look, I'm a low key MGK guy. I'm not gonna lie. I do like some MGK. All right, not really more of the rock stuff, more of his rap stuff from back before he got on the radio. Shout out to those days. But I will say that Denny Hamlin coming through, getting it done. It was tight there at the end, man. But Denny was able to get it done, got it finished, got his first clash out the way. There's all kinds of speculation now about whether it's going to be here or there. But staying true to what the race was that night, Ty Gibbs, man, coming out strong on the short track and showing what he's got, bumping up in with Joey Logano out on the hauler. Got a little beef going with him now. I really think like this is going to be the year where we see Ty Gibbs evolve into the Money Mike of NASCAR. I don't know if you're a fan of the movie Friday or Friday After Next. Cat Williams played Money Mike. It was, he kept the hand strong. He comes in. I really think that we're going to see some of that swag coming out of Ty this year, and he stood up to Joey, man. Joey's like like a light pole.
Very tall guy with fake hair. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Tall guy, fake hair, or as Dale Jr. calls him, insurance salesman, not on track.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did get that far into the show.
Yeah. The best person at pitching life insurance. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as a former insurance agent, I think he makes us look bad. So, I'm, all jokes aside, it was a great way to start the season off. It was great to see that NASCAR is saying, you know what, we're not going to keep our heads in our ass right now. We're going to get out there and we're going to make things happen for the fans. Over 1 million, I think 1.5 million views on the race on Fox.
I just saw that. Yeah.
Netflix,
I think,
but yeah.
I think it was a great, I agree. I think it was a great race. And oddly enough, it doesn't look like a great racetrack. Like, I won't lie. Like, it's so short. And I went there last year. I saw it in person.
It's a show.
It is a show. But Ryan Blaney went from last to third. So, like, there was passing. And I know that that's going to hate, like, people are going to hate that who think the racing wasn't that great. But, like, even Denny, he went from leading to struggling to leading. And so, like, I actually didn't mind the racing. It wasn't too much of a giant wreck festival. Obviously there were a couple of people sending a couple other people directly into the wall, but I thought it was a good race. Like, I was sitting watching with Travis Pastrana. We were having a couple Tito's and sodas and enjoying the race. And I thought it was a good race. So I think for what it is and for what they had to do with it, I think you can call it a reasonable success. Now, again, I can see why people might not like it. But when it comes to the actual racing, I saw someone go from last to the top three. I saw a leader struggle, exchange of leadership, and a decent finish. So, yeah, I thought it was a good one.
What more are you going to ask for? I remember you showing up there. This was the first time I didn't get to go to the Clash this year. So this year was my first time watching on television, and I actually only got to catch about half of it, so I had to watch a lot of highlights. My son had a Pokemon tournament
there
that
you
night.
Go. We
My
love
child's
Pokemon.
Killing the game.
Yeah.
Shout out to them boys that catch them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So yeah, we're here. I'm about that life. But yeah, so that happened. So that was the only kind of like thing that happened where the moving it up maybe not worked so much for my schedule, but getting to go back, that's what the tube of the U is for. That's what we get to watch everything
Internet
on
clips.
These days. That's it, man. That's it. So I'm excited about that. And like, yes, if you go in person, like with what we got to experience, obviously, not a lot of people will get to experience that, but that is a great view of that track. And it's just really cool to see a race happen somewhere with so much history. So with them talking about where it's going to go, I don't know.
I agree. I did enjoy viewing it. I think now I'm not necessarily super interested in going again unless I'm racing in it, which is probably never going to happen. But I
Understandable.
enjoyed seeing it. I enjoyed seeing the spectacle, and I actually enjoyed watching it on television. So, you know what? Good
Checks
for
both
them.
boxes, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it built enough hype because you get a lot of people talking about it, and a lot more people watched it on FS1, which was I mean, that's still you get 1.5 million people or whatever watching on FS1 on a night that it wasn't even supposed to be. Just shows the power of NASCAR right now.
That's huge. And IndyCar is
yeah.
going to have something similar with their stuff that they're getting ready to go do out in California. What's the name of the
$1
place
million challenge or whatever.
$1 million challenge.
Yeah.
That's kind of like their little shindig. You know, I think that's
so.
cool.
I hope it works. Yeah.
I mean,
so.
it's a wild looking place. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah. Well, it's the land of the rich and famous, as they say, because they don't
that.
allow anyone else in. They don't allow anyone else in.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to give me a fake membership card.
Yeah. Well, you need more than a fake membership. You need a fake stock portfolio too.
You mean I can't show up with my jorts on, dude?
No. Yeah. The Buick hats aren't allowed either. So they won't even allow a Buick in. But anyway, a lot happened there. Let's get to our interview. We have a great interview with a young specialist, a young racing driver. So here we go. Jacob Abel, Indy NXT driver for Abel Motorsports. Let's hear what he has to say. Well, folks of Speed Street, our listenership, we have another youthful driver on this week. We have a very exciting young star of the open wheel racing ladder system of potential IndyCar stardom at some point. A Louisville, Kentucky man, according to my PDF that my producer Bobby has so graciously prepared for me. Jacob Abel, current driver in the Indy NXT series for Abel Motorsports. Jacob, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for waking up and being a part of this show. How are you doing, my friend? How are we feeling? Are we excited? Well, are we excited for the season to get going here, even though it's still only January?
Dude, absolutely. Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me on. You know, I've been a long-time listener of the show. You know, there's not a ton of IndyCar podcasts out here, but this is, the top one, for sure. But yeah, so happy to be on here. So I appreciate that. But yeah, man, really looking forward to this season. It's been a bit of a long off season. It always feels like it's a long off season. But yeah, getting lots of work in the gym and, on the simulator and in the shop a bunch, but nothing really beats the real thing. So yeah, excited to get going. We only got a few weeks now, so getting there.
Absolutely. So you have a unique story, I think, as well. And you said you listened to the Lindsay Brewer interview as well. She went to school. You also went to school. And if I believe this correctly, like I remember running into you at Butler University, which is a school that is very close to my family as well. What a wild, I guess, not a lot of drivers go to school anymore, college per se.
Sure.
So was that always the plan? Was it racing and then I'm going to throw in some school, or like how did you navigate that path?
Yeah, kind of the way I grew up. So I started racing pretty late, relatively speaking. So when I was 12 years old, which is ridiculous that is, late for racing to start. But yeah, and I grew up actually playing lacrosse, and doing that for my first, I did that for probably like 8 or 9 years. But I had an older brother and an older sister, and, I never did the homeschooling thing throughout high school. I always went to, a big high school in Louisville, that had some really talented sports and all of that. So yeah, I've always kind of been, in that normal kid, I guess, kind of lifestyle.
The normal path. Yeah,
exactly. So, my older brother and older sister went to college. They said it was, a fantastic experience, best 4 years of their life, all of that stuff. And with the racing, I didn't want that to be something that, I necessarily missed out on. Obviously, it's something that I want to have as a fallback too. That's definitely a thing. And I think using the schooling, and all of that, I went to school for marketing and business. Obviously racing has a lot of business in it. So
smart.
I'd like to think that I could sort of use a little bit of that, in my racing career. And it makes me maybe a little bit more qualified to have big business conversations with, big CEOs of companies. But yeah, so I unfortunately have not graduated.
That's okay.
But I did get, a good head start. I'm not taking classes currently. But, I went there for about 4 years. I was full time my first couple of years. COVID hit, kind of changed things up, and half the reason that I was even going to school in the first place was to make those connections, make those relationships, and have that in-person experience. And when COVID kind of shut all that down, it kind of took a little bit of that out of it. So I went back to doing part-time school. I did that for a few years, and then kind of when all of my friends graduated, I decided to, take off, and it's getting to a point in my racing career too, where it's very make or break. These next few years are going to decide whether I'm a race car driver, for the next however many years. So I really wanted to be fully invested in that, at least for these last few years. And you're not saying that I wasn't fully invested in it before. It's just obviously when you're trying to do the balance of school and racing, it's pretty tough. So I'm really excited to be fully into it now. It's 100% of my mind and everything is into racing, and I think it's definitely showed in the past year or so in the results, and I hope that continues for the next few years.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned something, the dedication level, right? Like, you can't do both. It's just impossible. Like, if you want to be at the highest level performing against, some of the other youngest drivers that are trying to, make it in this sport, that has to be your entire life. You have to live it and breathe it. So I mean, I get it. And I do agree that you have kind of proven this, hey, things are getting more serious here. And when you say, I love that you said like this time of year, like this time in your career is a very much a make or break type thing. However, I think when you're winning at the level that you're winning, right? You're on the podium, you're out here fighting at the front, that there are many routes you can also go in this sport. But like proving yourself at this level, I think is still something that people respect, but also something that you can kind of continue to carry on wherever that is, right? Sports car racing, NASCAR racing, IndyCar racing, whatever it is. But the goal being IndyCar. Let's start out like on the lower levels of the road to Indy. Your family has been obviously very, very supportive, right? Abel Motorsports, I mean, that's your last name, right? Dad's very, very heavily involved. He loves motorsport as well. I think your dad is a great person. I've enjoyed getting to interact with him, honestly. And I think you've probably seen this. People can easily say and be very judgmental of that. Like, oh, well, his dad's got the team, all this stuff. Which I said this to Lindsay too. Like, I'm sorry, not everyone's going to have it the same way. Like I got into racing because my dad had a lot of great connections. Like, he knew a ton of people who helped me get in the right places, and he didn't make enough money in racing to, get us very far, but like at least we had the right connections, right? You got to use whatever you can use. You got to use every opportunity to be the best you can be. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to you as the driver. And now you are running at the front. I don't hear anyone talking about the fact that your dad owns the team. Like, I mean, if you're up front, that's all that matters. So what has that been like kind of learning? Because I would say that you've been on a pretty steep progression level. Because at first it was like, I mean, we know Jacob Abel racing, doing this stuff, but now you're at the front. So you're kind of proving a lot of those people wrong. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Kind of the theme of my whole racing career, I'll take it back a little bit. Like I was saying, it's weird to say, but I did, start racing late, for starting at 12, 13 years old. That was a later time than, a lot of these kids starting 5, 6. I don't know when you started, but it was probably around then. And so I've always kind of been a little bit on the back foot, and a little bit, kind of sink or swim has been a lot of my, racing career. And so also my dad's a racer. He grew up racing motocross at, a super high level, won amateur national championships. All of that was kind of right on the brink of going like supercross racing and doing all of that. That's one of his, he looks back and regrets it a little bit, that he didn't end up doing that for a few years because, it's just like us in racing. You grow up with these people, and he's been racing with these guys, and he knows he's better than them, but they made it and he didn't, but whatever. So yeah, I actually started go-kart racing at a dirt track, dirt oval racing in Clark County, Indiana. So
love it.
It was a little bit of a different thing. And that was honestly about 10 years ago now is when I did my first race. And, so we've obviously come a long way since then, but like I said, it's kind of been a little bit sink or swim, my whole entire career. And, I did go-kart racing. I did, I think, 1 or 2 club races at Newcastle. And then I think my third race in a go-kart was, a USPKS race. And so it was, again, a very big step. And I only really
And for those who don't know USPKS, that's a high level karting series here in North America. So that's taken a step to the higher level.
Right. And then so it was kind of like that my whole karting career is it was very short lived, but I raced Super Nats when I'd only been racing go-karts for, 2 years. So, and I showed, reasonable success, as much success as, I could look at it as a success, being a very, new to this kind of driver. But then after that, I immediately jumped into the F4 car, and kind of going into the Abel Motorsports side of things. It gets a little bit misconstrued. It's like, oh, you guys have so much money, you're going to go start your own racing team. But my dad is, he's a businessman. He'd much rather, F4 at the time, which is, I was thinking about this. It's crazy. It was about $170,000 is a budget. I think it's, at least double that now. But still at that time, he had a really difficult time going out and just cutting, $170,000 check for what? Nothing. I mean, like I get to go out and I get to go, race for a whole
it's for an experience.
Season. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the way he looked at it was, hey, this car is only $50,000. So like, why, why don't we, get this and then kind of start things? But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself again. So we had Abel Racing because my dad grew up, or when I was growing up, he was racing vintage cars. So he was doing, SVRA, if anyone's familiar with that. Did a bunch of races doing that, which that one is a very much, do it yourself kind of racing. And he had, a bunch of friends that were into racing, and we kind of built that team around him. So when I got into F4 racing, it was a relatively easy transition to sort of transition the program into the F4 racing. But yeah, honestly, it's just been a pretty big snowball effect from there. We had a 1-car F4 team, and I think that was 2017. And then in 2023, we had 3 Indy Next cars, and we had a car in the Indy 500. So yeah, it's pretty wild to see how far the team has come, in the past few years. And, there's 100 different people who have made that possible. And, we'd be here forever if I were to name all of them. But, someone who is super influential into that team, someone you're familiar with, is John Bruner.
Yeah. I was just going to mention, you guys have built this operation into something that has a lot of great people. John Brunner, who was before, I mean, I've known John Brunner since I was a child. Like, he used to be at Forsyth, and my dad was there. Forsyth was an investor in my career. And then Kent Boyer, the engineer in the Indy Lights side, in the NXT side, he was on the engineering squad when I was at Schmidt with Joseph Newgarden. And so all of it, like, you guys have built a great group. Even some of the mechanics I feel like I see pictures of your team on Facebook all of a sudden. I'm like, I've worked with everyone there, or like someone there. So you guys have built your dad's not a dummy. That's for sure. He's put together good people. He's an asset guy, right? Like you mentioned, instead of just writing a check to go racing, how about we actually have things? Like if we ever want to get out of it, like, you're not completely dead in the water. You have things that are worth something and will forever be worth something.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing. And that's the thing that's been, very rewarding for him, definitely. And me, just to see it, is, the past couple of seasons, we're finally, getting paid back a little bit on that stuff. We're building now. Abel Motorsports is a business. We have drivers coming to us with budget who want to race, both on the IndyCar side of things and on the IndyNext side of things, which is something that's really cool. And, it kind of makes it all look back and be like, okay, that was worth it. Because trust me, there were, tons of times where, I was going into race Indy Pro 2000. I'm like, man, it'd be really nice to be over there with, Juncos, who has 100,000 Indy Pro 2000 championships and wins, and, 7 drivers on their team and all that. But, I'm really glad it's worked out the way that it has. It's definitely made me and my dad a lot closer. Even though we've probably had a lot more arguments than, most father and sons. And I'm sure you can relate to that too. But it's gotten to the point where it's, it's cool now. And honestly, like we don't deal with each other one-to-one on the race weekends, a lot. I kind of report to John and Kent and all those people. So me and my dad don't actually have to, have those conversations where, I'm trying to be a race car driver and, I'm also, trying to have an input on how this team's run. So I'm glad that it's like that. John doesn't really take any of my BS. So that's good. But yeah, it's been super cool. And we've been able to show, a good amount of success the past, year or so, which has been really rewarding for me too. Like you said, we have a really strong team and it's a team that I've grown super close to. And so it's super rewarding for me to, finally bring them, that success and, show the rest of the world what this team is capable of, because, it's been something that I've known for forever, but, it's just something that's been very rewarding and very cool to be able to, go out and be able to show the rest of the paddock and the rest of the world like that, they're a really talented team.
Yeah, and I honestly have so much to ask about, because I think people really should know, about this whole operation and kind of what it looks like. It's almost like it's kind of wild to say, but it's almost like the perfect model. Like, your dad got involved because he had the means to get involved. He's smart enough to know, hey, you know what? This isn't going to I'm not going to roll the dice on this and be like upside down if, buying an F4 car goes wrong. You know what I mean? Like, you
Right.
done it right. You've now proven that, hey, we're actually going the right way. And as you said, it's not a one-car team anymore. It's not just you running in this program, right? So that's almost the perfect. And you guys have run a successful IndyCar effort first time out. Like, to be honest, out-qualifying half the people who are spending $10 million a year on their cars, the Rahal Letterman Group, and a couple other teams as well. And what I respect the most, too, is that your dad didn't dump you right in there into the Indy 500 right out the gate, too. You know what I mean? Because people could have easily said, hey, dad owns the team. You know what? I know my son's in Indy NXT, but let's just throw him in there, too. It'll be fine, because my dad pushed this harder than ever. You got to get in when you're ready. Like, you got to be able to take advantage of the opportunity when it arises and not too early. And so having RC Enerson there, which again, I think he's a great dude, and he's able to, go out there and do a great job for you guys. So I love this whole model. And so getting to a question now, when you have a team that has multiple cars now in Indy NXT, the series has grown so much, right? I mean, shoot, I remember when there was like 4 cars out there. It felt like it almost doing anything. But there's still a champion every year. But now you have to go up against like 12 car teams at HMD, which is kind of, I think, still an insane model that's even allowed to happen. But how difficult is that, knowing that, hey, you're going up against a very, very, very large operation? Now, you have good people, and in the end, it's about good people and using the resources appropriately. But you also got to fight against Andretti. I mean, these are all big teams. So what's that like as a bit of a smaller operation that's obviously grown, but that's got to be a challenge?
Yeah, no, it's tough for sure. I mean, like you said, it isn't a one-car team anymore, which is huge. I mean, for however long, I can remember, it was a one-car team and, maybe a teammate here and there that, would do a part-time season or something like that. So that's been super tough. I think it's a bit understated how tough that is. Obviously, you're aware of it, but, the general public, I don't think understands how difficult it is to be a one-car team, especially when, I'm trying to learn. I'm going up through the series, through the ladders. I'm not the best driver in the field, and I know that, I wasn't. I'd like to think I'm getting there now. But,
yeah, let's change our mental outlook here. We're gonna be all right.
Exactly. But going up, like, you really, really lean on the data of the other drivers, and working with setups and all of that with other drivers. So now it's super helpful. We already have one guy signed for next year in addition to me, which is Yuvan Sunderworthy, which is a really strong, young driver who's going to be around for a few years for sure, and hopefully, breaking into IndyCar one day as well. But
managed by Alexander Rossi's dad.
Yes.
So there's a connection there. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, so, I think that's going to be a really big advantage. But like you said, it's still super tough to go against teams like that. And it's not just like, it's not even 10 just mediocre drivers. They've got, 4 or 5 guys who are really, really solid. So, they're really able to use that. And I've heard some of the things, HMD specifically, what they're doing. It's not just 10 cars and click the fastest driver's data and just learn off one guy, just like it would be if it was, a 2 or 3 car team. They have these softwares that build everything and build these perfect laps with all 10 different drivers and all of that stuff, which is, super fascinating. But yeah, I think if we can compete with them, I think it, speaks even more volumes to what we're doing, there. And, I'd like to think it speaks volumes to what I'd be able to do as a driver. So that's a big thing too. Looking at the championship last year, going into, the second to last race, I was still in third in points. And unfortunately we had a bit of bad luck in the last couple of races, but, if things would have gone differently, we would have, finished third in points and only gotten beat by one HMD car and one Andretti car. So, that would have been pretty awesome. We still finished 5th. And at the end of the day, it's not a massive deal. The big focus is going to be 2024 here and really trying to make a push for that championship. But yeah, I think the Indy Next field is just crazy competitive. It's 20 drivers. You have all these drivers from Europe coming in, which, I always love because I think, they always think they're going to do a lot better than they actually end up doing. But yeah, so I love that. And I think it's going to be a really, really good season. And, I'm super confident going into it. We have really one goal in mind, and it's looking for that championship. And, because that's one thing. And like you were saying, my dad could have just thrown me in the car or whatever. And, I really personally, Jacob Abel, try and kind of, make that divide a little bit between Abel Motorsports and Jacob Abel. I don't want to be a driver in IndyCar that doesn't, belong there. Not that there are any drivers there that don't belong, but
well, I mean, that's another subject there, Jacob. I think we could argue at least a couple, but hey, continue.
But yeah, I really want to prove myself at the lower levels, before I get there. And, I did an IndyCar test, a few months ago, and it went really well. And, got a lot of interviews after saying, oh my gosh, are you going to go IndyCar racing now? Are you going to go IndyCar racing? And, short answer was no. Like, yeah, that test went great. And we were really competitive with some pretty experienced guys, but I haven't won an Indy Next race yet. I haven't won a championship in Indy Next, so I understand that, the best way to make sure that you belong in the big series is, to prove yourself, at the lower level. The easiest way to do that would be win the Indy Next championship, but yeah, I understand that I need to go out and prove myself here and do what I need to do so that, when and if I get to IndyCar, I really belong there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think what's interesting about Indy NXT right now is that it's back to like when I was growing up, which I am a much older man than you now, which is kind of scary to say. But like, we were looking at Indy Lights fields and, you'd have 20 cars, you'd have drivers that you're like, oh yeah, like a bunch of those guys are going to go to IndyCar. It was just a lot of there was just more. And then you kind of went through this Indy Lights thing where like, oh man, like you kind of hate to see that there was 8 or 9 cars or 10 cars. But like when you still look at who was the champion of those, like the funny thing is like you still have all these Indy NXT champions like in IndyCar now, because it doesn't matter. Like the cream still rises to the top, as they say.
Right.
And even now that you have, I would say what makes the field better now that there's more cars is like, okay, the top 3 in the championship are going to be, hey, if let's say it doesn't work out, look, I've been in a position where I thought I was going to win the GP3 championship. I got taken out 1 race to go. You know what?
Yeah.
You can still make it as a professional racing driver. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think you have the benefit, obviously, of, hey, your dad's got an IndyCar right there, and you've already tested an IndyCar for another team. Can you see yourself like, and I love talking to your dad at the PRI show. He was like, shoot, we'd run 2 cars to the Indy 500 if we had enough engines. You know what I mean? Like, right. I love that mentality. He sees the potential there. Do you see Abel Motorsport being a full-time IndyCar team? Do you see that being something that interests you? Or you're like, hey, if you win the championship this year, I'm going to have to take offers from my dad. I'm going to have to take offers from someone else. Because that could be an interesting situation, I assume.
Yeah, it's been a really cool thing. You know, my dad's a racer, so I'd like to think he understands a lot of things,
Oh, yeah.
better than the normal person. But to be completely honest, there's been no talks of me driving our Indy car like ever, like by this point, which is crazy. And it's,
Hey, we got to
most
talk to
people
your
think-
agent. Come on.
right. Well, most people think it's this program is all building up for Jacob Abel to be an IndyCar one day, but it's honestly like not really the case. If we get to the end of this year and I can't get any amount of funding together or anything like that, like we don't have the mean. We've been very, very fortunate, but we don't have the means to go cut a however many millions of dollar check.
Yeah,
to
that's
go
a
IndyCar
lot.
racing.
Yeah,
Right.
like running the
It's like-
500 like efficiently, like, okay, yeah, maybe we get to spend $1 million, like maybe. But if
Right.
you go to full time, you got to hire employees for the whole year. You
Yeah.
got to go to the wind tunnel. That's like $8 million. See, that's a
Right.
lot of millions of differences.
Exactly. So it's been a nice thing because you look at guys like Kiffin Simpson. I think he gets a bit of a tough rap, but
Yep.
there's been times where I've I kind of feel bad for the kid because you look 2 years ago when he was in Indy Next, he was already going to IndyCar in 2 years, so it was fully on him. It's very fortunate. Obviously, we all wish we had big long IndyCar contracts and all that, but there's a lot of pressure on this guy like to perform. Like he knows he's going to be there, so it's up to him to be good enough to be there by the time he gets there. So it's stuff like that, which is nice because that pressure isn't put on me. It's not like this path is laid out for me. Yes, I think Abel Motorsports is trying to build a full-time IndyCar program. And I think that'd be awesome. But if somebody comes to the table next year and says, hey, here's, $8 million, can we race IndyCar for the full season? It's going to be really hard to say, oh, we'll take Jacob with $1 million over him, even though, he's our guy. But like, it is a cool thing because it's a little bit of a misconception from the outside that this is all being built, for me and all of that. When, I'm honestly, I try and get it in the hat, like, hey guys, I'd love to race the Indy 500 this year. I think I'm ready, all this, but it does come down to, it is still a funding thing and all of that. So, we'll see. Obviously I'd like to be an IndyCar and I'd love to be with, Abel Motorsports. It's been a really cool thing to be with this team and just build a fantastic relationship with all of the guys. I've, like you said, Kent Boyer is my engineer and he's, we've worked together. This is going to be our fantastic guy.
Like Kent
I've got to know his family super well, and all of that. And, this is going to be our 4th season together. And, hopefully, we'll be able to go out and get some really good results. But it's relationships like that I'm super thankful for, that have been really cool to build, being in this family operation. I go in the shop, a couple times a week and just, hang out and, talk to the guys and do whatever. We go to Christmas parties together, like all this stuff.
There you go.
It's been a cool thing to build that relationship. So yes, that would obviously be the dream, but nothing is for sure.
No, and honestly, I think people really have to respect that because what I actually would find most cool is that, like, especially for your dad to be like, hey, Jacob, you're going to go out and finish 1st or 2nd in the championship this year. Let's say you get, that seems to be enough right now to jump into an IndyCar, right? Like a lot of these teams are recognizing, hey, we're going to put Linus in, we're going to put whoever else in who's doing well at the time. But it would be hilarious, not hilarious, but like, hey, Jacob Abel is now going to go drive for Dale Coyne Racing, but Abel Motorsport is now going to have a 3-car Indy Lights team. He's going to have, well, I mean, shoot, I don't have 8 million, but I'd love to work on it. But because look how successful some of these team owners have become, right? Like it is a business for them. And so your dad already obviously has the construction business. That's great. But like, I assume he gets that nice, that like degenerate tingle in his heart when he's got a race team. You know what I mean? He's like, we're going racing, baby. And like, we're a successful, like we're a good team. We're not a bunch of losers, which is great. So I think that would be an amazing situation if like you're out there racing, your dad's got a team out there. And it was like very much like the Ray Halls. You know what I mean? Like Graham was driving for another team, racing against his dad, but it was like I love that idea, and I do hope that it formulates. But yeah. Anyway, I think that's an awesome deal. When it comes to Indy NXT this year, where do you think you would like to improve the most? What do you think is your biggest area of improvement? And you work with Spencer Piggott, great friend of mine, former IndyCar driver as well. Should definitely still be a racing driver because he's a very talented man. Has he helped you a lot in kind of figuring things out and being a better driver?
Yeah, Spencer's been super, super helpful. I mean, and it was honestly like you said, he should be a racing driver still. He should still be an IndyCar. And, I agree. But I think it shows just how crazy, the business is. Because, like, I didn't really know how successful he was until, he started coaching for me and I got to spend a lot of time around him and all that. He's a pretty humble guy. He won't be going out here bragging about everything he's done, this and that. But like just saying, like, we'd go to Iowa. He's like, oh yeah, like, I got third here.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. And you're not still in IndyCar. Like, it's just crazy. It shows how much of a business it is. But to have a guy like that, in my corner has been super cool. There's a lot of driver coaches out there. And, I think there's a lot of really good driver coaches out there. But to have a guy like Spencer as a driver, we all have egos, and we all have a hard time taking criticism just naturally and hard time listening to people. So when I have someone like that in my corner who's been in my shoes and he won the Indy Lights Championship in his first year in it when the field was still really strong. So to have that, it's kind of hard to argue with him when, you look at his pedigree. So it's puts a lot more merit into what, everything he says, and it makes it a lot easier to trust him. And he's also like a big thing that, I've enjoyed about him. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, like
it's good. That's important.
He's very to the point. And if you're doing something wrong, he'll be like, well, what are you doing? Why are you doing this wrong? Like, fix it now.
Yes.
Like, okay, sorry. Like, my bad. But yeah, I think going into the 2024 season, Indy Next, similar to IndyCars, is a very big qualifying series. Our race pace was pretty awesome this year. We were able to basically move forward in every single race. Actually, a funny analogy, I've always thought I was good at starts. And then I went down to New Zealand last year and I was talking to my engineer down there. He's like, are you really good at starts or are you just really bad at qualifying? So I'm like, okay, that's
interesting.
That's not a terrible point. I got to think about that one a little bit. So
it's like my rookie year in IndyCar, I won an award for passing the most cars, and I was like, well, so that means I always started at the back. So that's
right.
I don't know if this is good or not, but you know what, someone had to do it.
Right, exactly. So I think with all that being said, going into 2024 qualifying, I think is going to be a big emphasis. We didn't do terrible with it this past season, but it's pretty hectic for us too, because we have 19, 20 cars in the field, and they shortened our sessions to make it much more like IndyCar, which I personally love. In addition to doing the Firestones, giving us that, they shortened the sessions to, I think 8 or 12 minutes or something, which is, pretty short, especially when you have, 19, 20 cars. So I think they may change the format of that going into this year. I think it'd be really cool to have a Fast Six situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think going into next season, I think that'll definitely be, the primary focus. I think our race pace, and I think me personally as a driver, my consistency is probably something that, I would say is my biggest strength, is kind of always, making the most out of what we have on the day, and getting a top five when, a top five was available, not, trying to go for a podium and wrecking and finishing, 20th. Especially now, that's really important because we don't have 8 cars in the series. We have 20 cars in the series. So you wreck out of a race, you get 20th place points instead of, 9th place points. So
yeah,
I think that is going to be, I'm going to try and keep that up going into this year. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. And, I feel like just getting that first freaking win off our back is going to be a huge thing. I feel like there were 3 races that we probably should have won last year. St. Pete, I led 30 laps and we had like 7 cautions at the end of the race. So they just kept bunching everyone up. And then I messed up on one restart. and ended up
I
finishing
remember. I
third.
was watching.
Yeah. So Iowa, I literally finished second by like 5 inches. And, Road America had a terrible qualifying, drove through the field and didn't have enough tires to, finally pass for the lead. So it's just like, I feel like we should have won so much this year. And that's definitely going to be a big thing, is getting that out of the way, as soon as possible. If we're really going to have, a shot at that championship, is just getting that monkey off our back so we can, focus on the championship and, just getting solid results.
Well, I think what you'll find is that, and I found this my second year of Pro Mazda, or whatever that is now, Indy Pro 2000 or whatever it is.
Name number 7, yeah.
Yeah. Like, when you find yourself very close to that success level, and then you come back, you're gonna find yourself way more experienced. You're gonna find yourself being able to take advantage of situations. I won one race my first year in Pro Mazda, and that was like the big jump up to the next level. And you're like, well, I think I was close to like a couple others. I won 7 races the next year. You know what I mean? Because you just knew but you knew all those. Yep, gonna qualify better, gonna do this better. So I think your confidence is gonna go up, which is important. And then as 100%. Long as you just keep knocking out those, those laps one at a time, hey, we're going to qualify better. Cool. If we don't, well, we're still going to do this better. You know what I mean? So I think you go into it with a better mindset. And I know we've taken up a lot of time. Bobby, I want to open it up to you really quick to jump in here. Producer Bobby's going to get a question on the board here.
Thank you. Jacob, when we had Lindsay on last week, she was talking about the jump, I believe, from Pro 2000 to Indy Next. And saying that, like, the power in the cars, a lot of people say, is more significant than the jump from Indy Next up to IndyCar. And now that you've tested pretty much everything, I was wondering if your experience was similar, and if maybe you could verbalize what that jump is like for listeners that don't race.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously Connor's, familiar with the jump as well. It's growing up, in the series, I had a lot of friends that were at, higher levels and all of that. So always talking to people about, their first time in an Indy car and all of that. And I always remember a bunch of people saying like, oh, the Indy car is actually like, almost easier to drive than, the Indy Next car. And I'm like, that's such BS. Like, there's no way. This is an Indy car. These things go 240 miles an hour, around Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But yeah, no, it's a very, very smooth transition from the Indy Next car to the Indy car, especially now with the Firestone. A lot of the characteristics are very similar, with the way you can drive the car into the corners, sort of how you generate lap time and all of that stuff, which I think has been a really good change for the Indy Next series to implement that, which has been super awesome. But yeah, and I drove at Sebring too, which is obviously not the smoothest track. It's actually super, super bumpy. And the IndyCar did feel, much better than an Indy Next car around there, because the amount of development that they have in terms of, the shocks and the suspension and all of that, and even things as far as the engine and how the car handles, slow speeds and shifts and downshifts and all of that stuff it's just all so fine tuned. Obviously IndyCar is a spec series, but just what they're able to, exactly. Semi-spec series.
Yeah.
But what they're able to develop is pretty spectacular, how much different it is than the Indy Next car. The pace honestly isn't even wildly different either. But yeah, I honestly thought the Indy car felt, super, super nice to drive.
Well, Jacob, we appreciate you being on this program. I think you'll have plenty more IndyCar tests, hopefully in front of you here. But yeah, the Indy NXT season, we focused a little bit on it. Probably going to try to have some more folks on it. If you talk to Miles Rowe, he hasn't answered my DM on Twitter yet. I don't know what's going on.
He's a Penske driver. He's pretty big time, man.
I know. I sent him a message to be on the show. I haven't even got a response. So someone's got to. So we got to talk about that somewhere. But yeah, I appreciate you being on there. I think it's going to be a great season of Indy NXT. I think it's going to be very exciting. And we wish you all the best. Wish your family the best. I assume, hey, let's not say too many things, but we assume we saw R.C. Anderson at IndyCar Media Day. Probably going to be another Abel Motorsports attempt to make the Indy 500. So pretty exciting program you got going on over there. So we appreciate that. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate, first of all, just like you giving a platform to all the IndyNext drivers. I think that's, super cool. But I appreciate you having me on. We've become friends the past couple of years, so it's good to sit down and talk.
That's what happens when we hang out on boats. You know what I mean? We end up on podcasts. We hung out on boats, and now we're on a podcast. So that's great progression. All right, Jacob, thank you.
Good deal, man. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Young Jacob Abel. Great driver, great conversation. Happy that he's open to being honest about his situation and everything. And from now on, Chase, you'll get to be a part of these interviews. So look forward to it.
I am. I have no idea what just happened. Can't wait to check it out.
There you go. All right. So now I actually really enjoy the theme music we have to introduce this segment. So let's go to the Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week.
The greatest event of its kind that's ever been run on.
Time now to meet the drivers who will make up the field.
All right. So this year, or this episode, we kind of did something honoring the number 24. Number 24 is the number that I will be in the Indy 500 this year. So we went to the 1924 Indianapolis 500. And honestly, the 1924 Indianapolis 500, even the winner could be the Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week, because I did not know that LL Corum won the Indy 500. I did not know that he won 500. That name did not make my list. But he is not our Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week. Also, random fun fact of this Indy 500, the last place finisher in this year's Indy 500, 1924, got $5 as his prize money. So $5 went to the last place finisher. Different era for sure. But this random Indy 500 Driver of the Week, the 15th place finisher in this event, Ora Habe. Ora Habe, I don't know if that is how you pronounce it right, but Ora Habe is this week's Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week. Ora Frederick Habe, born in 1887. What an era for America, 1887.
Great times.
Mean, that's wild. And this guy lived quite a life. Died in 1970. I mean, that's 83 years of life. That's pretty impressive for someone born in the 1800s. Ora Habe made his first start in the Indianapolis 500 in 1916, driving a car constructed by auto dealer and driver Swan Ostawig. I don't know if I've pronounced that right at all.
Great guy.
Habe had a best finish of 5th at the Indy 500 in 1921 in a Sunbeam and a Duesenberg, respectively. So, yeah, pretty wild. 1916, 1919, 1921, 22, and 24 were Ora Habe's Indy 500s.
They didn't talk about anything about like his like entire contribution to like the French fry revolution.
I didn't hear about that one. No, I didn't see that on the Wikipedia page.
Dudes, okay, so this is one good thing about me for everybody that's new to the Chase Garage Guy experience. I have a lot of facts about these drivers that obviously don't get put on Wikipedia and other places on the internet. So, Ora was actually a part of the inspiration behind the Ore-Ida French fry, company, 1949. The inventor's wife of Ore-Ida French fries was actually, a big fan of Ora. And it didn't really know that. Her husband didn't watch racing, unfortunately. He couldn't really watch it much on the radio at the time. But, he did accidentally misspell Ora's name because it's O-R-E for Ore-Ida, and he misspelled that on the Articles of Incorporation.
That does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, he was a part of that because the founder of Ore-Ida wanted to just honor his wife's favorite driver. Then he misspelled the name. It was really unfortunate, but I do think more people should know this and understand this.
Yeah, now this is all allegedly. This may or may not have happened. It might not. It might have.
To my knowledge.
To your knowledge, your sole knowledge.
To Chase's knowledge.
Chase's knowledge. But anyway, Ora Habe.
Chase
Ora Habe, big French fry connoisseur apparently, or not. These are just alleged,
Inspired by.
maybe even false, inspired by information. But anyway, Ora Habe, 1924 Indy 500. So there it is. We have another Ricky Treadway random Indy 500 driver of the week. First one that Chase has experienced. So yeah, we appreciate you guys. Again, please feel free to leave us a rating on the podcast rating system. That's very helpful. Leave us a comment, leave us a like on the YouTube video, be a subscriber on all of these things. Just do all the things. Like the videos, like the podcasts, give us some stars if you want to give us some stars. Just keep it going. We're trying to build up a wonderful year this year, and I think it will be. We got some exciting next week. Now, to give us a little next week hint, long-time two-wheel racing legend Chad Reed has committed to being on the show. Chad Reed, great friend of mine, great friend of the LCQ League, which if those who have really followed me for a long time will know, an iRacing league we did while the entire world was shut down in the year of 2020. Chad Reed also raced against him in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series, so I can't wait to talk to him. He's going to be a great guy. And then the next week, we got Mike Shank, it sounds like, as well. So we got some great guests coming up, really, really cool stuff. So just stay tuned, keep liking all the stuff, and we'll see you next week on Speed Street. Hey everyone, Connor Daly here. Please leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That would be very helpful. Be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Speed Street.